And hello and thanks for joining us today. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America, and I am delighted to have as our guest Kwame Alexander, New York Times bestselling author of 28 children's books, including The Crossover, Solo, and his latest book, Swing. He is the winner of the prestigious Newbery Medal for Most Distinguished Contribution to American Literature for Children, and that happened in 2015, but I know it's going to keep happening over and over again because you single-handedly are making such a huge contribution
well,
to.
Thank you. From your lips.
Yeah, I'm telling you, as I told you in the green room, I have a 9-year-old that I follow down, the corridors of bookstores,
right.
And we always see all of your Kwame Alexander books, so thank you for.
You're welcome. I'm a 26-year overnight success.
Oh, really? How do you define that?
I've been working a long time.
Yes.
Swing is my 28th book. So I've been in the trenches writing for the passion because I wanted to sort of impact the world in some positive way, one word at a time. So this is all great. But there was a time where my books were nowhere on the shelves.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was a time where, there were maybe 2 people show up at a book sale.
Right.
So it's great.
And now they're packed.
And now I'm being invited on Black America.
Well, of course.
So
of
it's
course.
on.
And we're late to the party. We should have had you here before, and we will definitely have you again. And your books are so influential. The New York City Public Schools have asked you to come in and talk about how to encourage children to read.
Right. And right. I think I have, my life was sort of spent immersed in language and literature. My parents were writers and readers. And so I grew up in this house, I tell people all the time, where I didn't find poetry, I didn't find books, they found me. And it's because of my parents. And so I think, while I rebelled against it a lot as a child, certainly I learned much of what I know now at that age. In fact, when I won the Newbery Medal, I called my dad. He was the first call. And my dad, who had forced me to read his dissertations from Teachers College, Columbia University at age 11. My dad, who had forced me to read Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire at age 12. I called my dad and said, Dad, I won the Newbery, and his response was, yeah, we did it.
We did it. He's taking credit, right?
Exactly.
He's taking his share of the credit.
So I want to share a little bit of what I learned over my years with teachers.
And let's place you in Black America. Brooklyn, Virginia,
right.
That influence, and obviously you come from a family of academics, writers,
sure.
Not only your parents, but your siblings as well,
right.
Extremely successful.
Right.
But this idea of writing came to you when you were 12?
Well, it came to me much earlier than that because writing, you have an idea of expressing yourself, of finding your voice because of reading. Because you've been sort of exposed to what's possible and you've used your imagination, and now you want to translate that. And the reading started, from Dr. Seuss. It
sure.
started at age 3. I was going to Riverside Daycare, and it started with Lucille Clifton's Everett Anderson series.
Oh, you started with the best.
It started with Spin a Soft Black Song by
right.
Nikki Giovanni. My parents were taking me to readings and jazz and poetry events at 4 and 5 years old. I didn't know what was going on. But certainly by the time I was 12, I felt I had some sort of inclination to write. And I wrote a poem for my mother on Mother's Day.
I love this.
My first poem.
Love this story.
You want to hear it?
Yes, because you didn't have money, so you wrote a poem for your mother.
Yeah, I didn't have any money. I had $3, and
right.
that wouldn't be a good gift.
So you wrote this poem.
It's horrible.
Okay.
But
okay.
I share it.
Okay.
Dear Mommy, I hate Mother's Day. Because in my heart, every day is Mother's Day.
Oh.
And I love you, dear Mommy.
Oh, that's
a terrible
wonderful.
poem. But she loved it. She cried these tears of joy.
I know.
I sort of saw the power of words and what they could do, even at that sort of, very literary, immature phase of my life, but I knew it.
That is great. I was telling you the story of Sophie, my 5-year-old granddaughter, who asked me the other night, what's poetry?
Right.
And I'm saying, now how do I explain that to a 5-year-old? And of course, very lamely, I said, roses are red, violets are blue.
Yeah.
You'll never know how much I love you. She was thrilled and went off and drew a whole thing. But you have turned your books not only for small children,
right.
but for middle-aged children.
Sure.
The middle agers,
right.
most of your stories are written in verse.
Well, poetry, to sort of piggyback on your definition, which was wonderful, by the way, poetry is the right words in the right order.
Ah.
Langston Hughes called it like distilling the whole world, the human world, the entire human world, like a lemon, you know,
Right.
into very few words.
I love that.
To
I
really
love
capture this really powerful moments in our lives in such a concise and rhythmic manner. And I try to do that with my picture books, with my middle grade novels, with my young adult novels, because I ultimately believe, Carol, that poetry can be a bridge that allows our young people to appreciate language and literature in an immediate, urgent, and a really emotionally powerful way. The white space on the page, it's not intimidating. And so I find that it has worked for me. It's transformed my life. I met a woman on a bus after college, liked her, wrote her a poem every day for a year. She married me. Poetry works.
Is that right?
It's right.
That is terrific. Now, I want to talk about another woman who was very influential in your life, Nikki Giovanni,
Yes.
the great poet as well. Tell us how she influenced you.
Wow, this is going to be on record. I don't think I've talked about this on camera. Are these cameras
Yeah,
on?
they're on. We want to hear the Nikki story.
So Nikki was my professor at Virginia Tech, and I took 3 courses with her. In year 1,
Right.
she gave me a C. I didn't particularly care for that. In year 2, she gave me a C. I didn't like it at all. I scheduled a conference with her and went in her office and sort of told her this was a problem. I'm a huge Nikki Giovanni fan. I know your work.
As
I
we
grew
all
up on
are.
your work
Yes,
as a child, and I don't think I deserve a C. And she looked at me and she said, I can teach you how to write poetry, but I can't teach you how to be interesting.
Oh. Wow.
I stormed out of that office. I was so livid. 3rd year, I took her class and got a C. So I left Virginia Tech. We weren't necessarily, in my estimation, on the best of terms.
Right.
We didn't speak again. I saw her 2 years later. She bought a couple of copies of my book, which I found odd because I didn't think she liked me. And over the next 20 years, our relationship went from sort of what I would have viewed, and she says it to this day, it wasn't in her mind.
Right.
I thought was estranged, to her being, as she puts it, my literary mother. So she is as much responsible
As your dad.
as my dad.
Right. That's great. Right. Well, we love Nikki. You said you're going to get her on the show for us. So
Did I say that?
yeah, you said that. That's
If it's possible,
that was a
I will make
promise.
it happen.
Were we taping that? Right.
I'll come back with her.
So a lot of your books are aimed at boys, young, it seems, Black boys. Talk to us about that. What you're gifting them with.
A lot of my books, I believe, are aimed at everyone. Kids, boys, girls, Black, white, mothers, teachers. I believe I write about Black boys. But I
that's
believe
the difference.
That's my feeling.
Right.
But I believe the books are for you and your 9-year-old granddaughter. I
Right.
believe they're for all of us. But I try to write about boys because I don't feel like we get our fair share. We're not, it's not. We haven't been really looked at as being, human beings who laugh, love, cry, walk, dance, just like everyone else. And I want to tell those stories about me and my friends when I was growing up, and how the things that mattered to us about whether the girl was going to smile back at us,
Right.
or whether we were going to get a B or a C on the test, or whether we were going to be able to go riding our bike after school, or our parents were going to make us come in the house, or whether our grandfather was going to make it.
Right. Well, you've given us all these characters. We had Walter Mosley here too.
Oh, wow.
Who has written all of these great male, detectives,
Sure.
stories. And I said to
Easy
him,
Rollins.
yeah, the same question. I said, why don't you have a woman? And he said, there are plenty of writers who have women protagonists. I'm writing for the guys, and I think you're telling their stories extraordinarily well. But now, so you talk about this, 26-year overnight success. You had a lot of rejections. You couldn't get your books published. Tell us about that and what changed.
Well, when I first started, I got hundreds of rejections. This was back in the early 90s. Nobody was publishing poetry really by unknown poets, in particular Black poets. And so I self-published my first 12 books. I really believed that my words had a place in the world. And I think maybe book 13, I decided I really want to try to work with another publisher. and I ended up writing a children's picture book about a rooster that stars a jazz band with Duck Ellington and Jules Davis. And it did okay,
Right,
but it was my
right.
foray into children's books. It was my
Right.
first children's book, and in working with another publisher. And subsequently, I wrote a book called The Crossover, which got rejected about 22 times.
22 times.
It was a novel, but it was
Right.
told in poems. It
Right.
was about two boys who have a loving relationship with their dad and their mom, and they play basketball, and it was poetry.
Now it's
And-
an award-winning book.
But before that, nobody wanted to publish it.
Right, right.
Because they didn't think poetry would sell, because they didn't think girls would read a book about basketball.
Right. Now, you did a TEDx about that question of yes and no. Let's take a look at that, and we'll talk a little bit more about it on the other side.
The no's are a part of life. I think we gotta learn to embrace the no's. They're going to happen. It's the way the universe works. But here's the cool thing. Once all the no's come to the party and they go home and they're exhausted, what's left? The yes. And how many yeses do you need? You just need one. Thank you.
I love it. You just need one, and then you got a yes for the book, and it went on to win the Newbery.
Dribble, fake, shoot, miss. Dribble, fake, shoot, miss. Dribble, fake, shoot, miss. Dribble, fake, shoot, swish. And I tell kids that, and I say, what does that mean? And they say, well, you got to keep trying, you got to keep shooting. Exactly, because if you stop shooting, you know what's never going to happen? You're never going to make it. And I just believe that. I've known that and learned that all my life. I learned that from my parents, and I certainly learned it from Nikki, who's a big fan of saying yes to life.
Right. Now, your wife was the one who told you to do the TEDx and to share this story. What did she say to you? After then, this is the woman you had the crush on that you wrote a poem to every day.
She's the embodiment of yes.
Yes.
I mean, because I sort of dated. I was out of my league, or she was out of my league.
Right.
And I wrote her a poem every day. I didn't have money, didn't have a car, didn't really have a temp job, didn't really have a whole lot going on. It was at the beginning of my writing career, but I wrote poems. I wrote her poems every day. I faxed her poems.
Right.
You know, I slid poems under her door or whatever, and eventually she ended up marrying me. And I think the poetry really, it was a way. She ended up saying yes. So I think the poetry was a way for me to find my voice, for me to build confidence, and for me to sort of figure out that I could do what it is I wanted to do if I claimed it, if I spoke it into existence. And I've tried to do that throughout my career and my life.
Yeah. Now, you do a lot of outreach. You've got the K-12 program that, let's talk a little about that and your Facebook project, all of these ways that you're trying to get to kids.
Right. So back in 2006, a friend of mine named Dana Davidson, she invited me to her school in Detroit. It's called Cass Tech. And she said, I want you to help my kids publish a book. And I thought, okay, cool. You can pay me to come in and do it. And she didn't have any money. And I said, I need about 2 weeks. She didn't have 2 weeks. She said, I'll take up a collection from the students, which she did. She got each student to pay $11. It's 150 kids. And she said, I only have 1 day. And I needed 2 weeks. But again, I'm a say yes person, Carol.
You said yes.
So I said yes, and I show up at the school, and there is a 200-page manuscript. The kids have written poems, essays, articles, axioms, and she wants this published into a book. And she wants the kids to do the work, and she wants me to train them in 1 day. So the first class, they come up with the title, design the cover. The second class, proofread the manuscript. The third class, and so forth. Each class becomes a department in a publishing company. And by the end of the day, we have a file, a PDF that goes to the printer. 2 weeks later, these paperback books come back from the printer. The kids have a book signing, they're autographing books. And my wife says, you just help these kids create a book in a day. Ended up doing it for 76 schools over 9 years around the world, and decided I wanted to put that work in a book to show teachers how to get kids excited, because about reading, about writing, but ultimately about becoming more human, about life. Because the
I
cool
love
thing,
that piece of your description of the work that you do. It's becoming more human.
yeah, I mean, that's what the poetry and the publishing does. People always thought, well, this is about kids making a book. No, this is about kids seeing what's possible when you work together as a community, when you believe in yourself, when you have the tools, and when you say yes to the opportunity. That's what it's ultimately about. The book is the product, but sort of the real world life experience is figuring out how to become a better person.
Right. So in addition to that project, we were talking a little bit earlier, and you now are having meetings with
We won't say
Hollywood.
who they are. Yeah, Hollywood.
Yes, with Hollywood. Right. We won't spoil your.
Right.
But you've been invited back several times now, which I told you is a very good sign, because they're excellent at saying no right away about turning your books, a series of them, into motion pictures and I hope television too, because that's more readily available on a daily basis to kids. Talk to us about that.
Yeah.
I asked you about The Hate You Give,
Right.
and that book translated into a very powerful film, I felt. Your daughter wanted to see the film, and you
Right.
said it may be a little too heavy for you. Tell us that.
I said, no, you can't see it. And she got upset, and she said, why? You're always, you can't censor me, and you're a big proponent of children's literature and black literature in particular, and how can you let your own daughter not see it? And she just went on and on. So I said, look.
Sounds like a persuasive argument.
Yeah. And then there's this other thing. I gave a speech once to about 6,000 teachers, and during the speech I told them that it's not rocket science. You're going to get kids to read, give them books that they want to read instead of books you think they want to read. But that requires you to know the kid. Books are amusement parks, and sometimes kids got to be able to choose the ride. And so my daughter was in the audience. So she says to me, Dad, you don't believe the things you speak about. I thought books were amusement parks.
She's learning well.
So I said, look, you read my book, Swing.
Right.
I'll let you read The Hate You Give, because I felt like it was sort of a Swing as a companion or a precursor. And if you read The Hate You Give, and we get through it and we can talk about it, and I feel like you're okay, we'll go see the movie.
Well, your reluctance was that The Hate You Give has some serious violence in it.
And language.
Right.
Yeah.
And so does your book.
I would venture to say that I am very careful.
Right.
And not very interested in using language that I feel doesn't move the story along. I'm not into using language for the sake of using it because it's cool or it's edgy or it might add some flavor to. No, I'm not. And I want to write books that I think my kid can read, ultimately. And so I would venture to say that the language is probably a lot different.
Right, the
between
language
Swing and
is
Hate You Give.
different, right? But also on the New York Times bestseller list, right?
Yeah. We share that, but not as much as Angie. Angie's book has been on the bestseller list for like
The Hate
eons.
You Give, right, forever. And yours is hit there, really quickly, out of the box, so that's great.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about hugging, giving hugs. What's the...
I feel like this is a great place for me to read something.
Great. Okay.
So I spent a weekend with Tupac Shakur in 1996. I thought I wanted to be a rap producer or concert producer, and so I produced a concert with him. And
that's quite a legacy to have. That's
was.
a nice little
and we didn't
piece
have
of a
enough,
resume.
We didn't have enough money to pay him.
Right.
And he was really cool about it, but he said, I'm not going on stage. You don't have my money.
Right.
So my rap career lasted like one weekend. And thank goodness it did.
Right.
But I got to know him a little bit and spend some time with him. And in each of the books I've written, he's had some sort of role. And so this is, the main characters in Swing are Walt and Noah. And this is when Noah discovers a tattoo that Walt has. What is that? I got a tattoo. When? When you bailed on me earlier, Walt says, peeling away the wrap to reveal. Dude, if you were going for the Tupac look, you missed terribly. Now, Tupac had a tattoo, Thug Life, across his abdomen.
Right. You
missed terribly. They left the T off, and you need them to fix it before you get roasted over an open pit at school tomorrow. No, bro, it's not a mistake. I didn't want Thug Life. I wanted Hug Life. Have you lost your mind? I haven't. I am more enriched today than I am yesterday. Did your mom see it? Nah, but my soon-to-be almost stepfather did. He took me to get it. We're bonding. Hug life. Get it? You must embrace life with a metaphorical hug and sometimes a literal one to really squeeze the goodness out of it. Hug life.
Wow. Very, very, very powerful.
Yeah. It's something we're trying to really, promote, encourage, get teachers, get parents, get everyone excited to sort of flip the thug life thing.
Right.
You know, which thug life meant the hell you give little infants forgets everyone. And it's about how we treat kids when they're little, and we don't treat them in a very functional, human way. And when they get older, we wonder why they're dysfunctional or why they're self-destructive. And so hug life is about hugging, you know, embracing our children.
I know, and children want it. My grandson, Sam, the other night asked me to put him in a circle, you know?
Wow.
Put him in a
Put
circle.
them in a circle. That's beautiful.
Hug life.
Hug life.
Well, this is one of my favorite books of yours, Out of Wonder.
Yes.
Because you deal with a lot of poets. Can I get you to read one more?
Oh, this is the poetry reading now?
Yeah.
You got me going for it.
We don't have any money either, Kwame, so don't leave us. Like,
Out of Wonder is a book celebrating poets. And I wrote this with two really cool friends, Chris and Marjorie. We each took 6 poets and wrote a poem inspired by them. And one of the ones I took was Maya Angelou. And this is a poem inspired by her called Majestic. Rise into the wonder of daybreak. Be a rainbow in the cloud. Be a free bird on the back of the night wind. Shine on, honey. Walk with joy in your golden feet over crystal seas and purpled mountains. Know your beauty is a thunder, your precious heart unsellable. Be brave, like a new seed bursting with extraordinary promise. Shine on, honey. Know you are phenomenal.
whoa, whoa.
Right?
That is great. That is great.
Yeah.
Well, so your life as a poet is succeeding now. Poets are supposed to be poor, though, aren't they? You know, I mean.
Well, I think somebody said there is no money in poetry and there is no poetry in money.
Right.
But I never wanted to be a starving artist. I wanted to make a living.
You have 2 daughters.
Yeah, and when I won the Newbery, the cool things that happened, well, 2 really cool things that happened is schools and libraries started calling and said, we want you to come to our school and talk to our kids and read from your books, and we'll pay you whatever. And the second thing that happened is I got to build a pool. So sometimes there are just the things like that, just that make you happy.
Right, right. So Maya Angelou is one of your poets, Nikki Giovanni. Who else?
We have E.E. Cummings, Emily Dickinson, Okut P. Bitek, who's an East African poet, of course, Langston Hughes.
Right, right.
Walter Dean Myers, Pablo Neruda, Rumi.
I love your face when you're mentioning, you know,
I get
it's
so
like,
alive.
that's what the kids really need to absorb. The look on your face when you talk about these poets and when you talk about reading and writing. So what is your writing life like? How are you one of those who sits down, writes every single day and carries a notebook and is writing 24 hours, 7 days a week?
That's an interesting question. It's a job, Carol. People think it's just this, oh, you get to go off and drink and smoke or whatever.
Oh, yeah, that's the other thing. Poets are supposed to be poor and drinking wine all the time.
No,
Come
no.
on, Kwame, right?
I wrote the crossover in Panera Bread.
Oh, you did?
I went every day for 5 years for 5 hours. And sat in the same chair. That was in 2009. I have a writing studio that I built now. I write in my writing studio. I write every day. When I'm on the road, I write on planes. I write in hotels. I was writing in the car coming over to see you, Carol. Like it's a job. You have to practice it. It's a muscle. You got to work it if you want to be good at it. And if you enjoy it, you don't even think of it as work. You're trying to really impact young people, engage them, excite them, and empower them. And hopefully the grandparents too.
You are amazing. We always ask our guests to finish the statement, the power, the strength of Black America. What is that to you?
Ooh.
You can do it in poetry if you want, Kwame. You're putting
The
you on
power
spot. And strength of Black America is. And this is our 4th season. We've had every guest. So
the power, the strength
of Black America
is that we are unbending, unflappable, unstoppable, unending. We are ultimately unspoken, but no longer untitled. We are undefeated.
Incredible. Can we say that you wrote that here on Black America?
You can.
And as a poet, are you optimistic about Black America in this year?
I'm optimistic about America. I'm optimistic about my family. I mean, as a poet, that's all you really have. You have the hope and the faith and the optimism. I mean, as a Black person, that's all you have. How we got over, we waded in the water. I mean, you gotta have hope. To be able to survive what we have survived and to thrive and to still be here, what did Langston Hughes say? We're still here.
Right. Thank you so much, Kwame Alexander. What a pleasure. What
Carol
a pleasure.
Jenkins.
His latest book for children is Swing. And you will love it. It's a New York Times bestseller. We thank you for being here. We thank you for watching, and we will see you the next time. The program is Black America.